Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a really shadowy world. We're talking about terror financing. It's a place where good intentions, like a simple donation, can get twisted and, without anyone even knowing, end up funding a total catastrophe.
So could your donation ever fund a terrorist? I mean, it's a shocking thought, right? But that line between charity and terror, well, it can be deliberately and very dangerously blurred. So the real question is, how does this even happen? How does money meant for good get twisted for something so evil? Okay, let's break it down.
All right, first up, the charitable disguise. This is really the central deception at the heart of the whole issue, using charities as a cover to fund violence.
Okay, so take the Holy Land Foundation. This is a perfect and pretty chilling example. Publicly, they were the largest Islamic charity in the United States, doing good work, focused on development. But behind the scenes, it was a totally different story. Investigators found it was actually a major fundraising arm for Hamas. They were funneling millions through this web of smaller, local committees to cover their tracks and bankroll the group's violent agenda.
Now, this is super important to get right. While this abuse is absolutely real and devastating, we're talking about a tiny fraction of legitimate charitable work. As Dr. Viktorovich says here, the vast majority of these charities are not radical. There are literally tens of thousands of organizations doing incredible, genuine humanitarian work. The real challenge, and it's a huge one, is figuring out how to spot that very small number operating with a hidden, violent agenda.
Okay, so that's the how. But what about the who? Let's look at probably the most infamous terror network of all, Al-Qaeda. How did they build their financial empire? Well, it wasn't an overnight thing. It was a strategy that played out over decades. Yeah, their financial structure really evolved. You can see it here on the timeline. It all started back in '79 as this services bureau to support the Mujahideen in the Soviet-Afghan war. Pretty straightforward. But then in the '90s, things shifted. Osama bin Laden moves to Sudan, starts setting up businesses, construction, finance, you name it. And finally, in '96, he gets kicked out of Sudan, goes back to Afghanistan, and forges that tight alliance with the Taliban. That's when things really solidified.
All right, now here's something really interesting. We have to talk about a myth, probably one of the biggest myths about Al-Qaeda. And that's the idea that Osama bin Laden was this rogue billionaire, personally funding the entire operation from some massive inheritance. Turns out, that's just not true.
The reality was actually way more complex. Think of Al-Qaeda less like a huge corporation with a single CEO and more like a decentralized global startup, a really violent one, obviously. U.S. intelligence figured out their budget before 9/11 was about $30 million a year. And almost all of that, it came from donations, a vast fundraising network. Bin Laden's own money was limited, and his assets were frozen way back in '94. And this is the key part. It meant there wasn't one single treasure chest you could go after. The money was flowing in from all over the place, which made it an absolute nightmare to try and stop. So, you've got this global fundraising machine. Now let's look at how they weaponized it for the plot that changed everything. The planes operation, better known as 9/11. I mean, the plan was just audacious. It starts with Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, or KSM, pitching this planes operation idea to bin Laden. Once he gets the okay, Al-Qaeda's leadership kicks in the crucial resources, the first operatives and the seed money. But the real key, the linchpin, was recruiting the Hamburg cell. These were guys like Mohammed Atta who were already living in Germany. They were chosen specifically because they knew the West, they could blend in, and they could pull off the infiltration needed for the attacks.
So what did this whole monstrous operation cost? About $500,000. Let that sink in. Just $500,000. That's it. That covered everything. International travel, flight school, living expenses for all 19 hijackers for months. When you think about global conflicts and military budgets, it's a shockingly, frighteningly small amount of money. And for that relatively tiny investment, this was the result. The human cost. 2,977 people murdered.
That number, the sheer horror of it, it absolutely galvanized the world. But everyone realized very quickly that this new war on terror wasn't just going to be fought with soldiers and bombs. It was going to be fought in banks, in accounting ledgers. They had to follow the money.
And this quote from the Treasury's Kenneth Dam, just a few months later, really nails it. He said, "We cannot bomb foreign bank accounts." Right? This was a different kind of enemy. You couldn't just defeat them with military might.
If you wanted to really cripple these networks, you had to starve them of cash. You had to cut off their financial lifelines. And you couldn't do that alone. It had to be a global effort. And the effort that followed was just massive. It wasn't just one agency's problem. You can see from this table it became a multi-front war. You've got the feds, with the IRS trying to keep an eye on over 1.5 million tax-exempt groups. You've got state governments, private watchdogs, the whole shebang. And the most critical piece? International cooperation. Because if you can't freeze the money in foreign banks, none of it matters. It was a total paradigm shift in warfare.
But man, the challenges were, and still are, immense. I mean, think about it. How do you actually tell a legitimate charity from a clever front? What do you do when some of your supposed allies have a clear pattern of looking the other way, as intelligence reports put it? And here's the trickiest part. Money is fungible. That means a donation for, say, a hospital is great, but it frees up other money that the organization already had, which can then be used for an attack. It's a logistical nightmare.
And all of this brings us right up to today. Because this financial battle, the one that started in the shadow of 9/11, is more relevant right now than it has ever been.
Just look at this. From a terrorist's point of view, the return on investment, it's just staggering. It's terrifyingly effective. That $500,000 investment for the 9/11 plot caused an estimated $2 trillion in economic damage. $2 trillion. And that's not even counting the cost of the wars that followed. It is, without a doubt, the cheapest and most devastating kind of warfare you can imagine.
And please, don't think for a second this is just a history lesson. It's happening right now. Just this year, a Syrian national was charged with taking $9 million in U.S. aid, money meant for humanitarian relief, and diverting it directly to an al-Qaeda affiliate. The exact same playbook is still in action today. So, if there's one thing to take away from all this, it's that the fight against terror is a financial one. Look, a terrorist with a weapon is dangerous, for sure. But a terrorist with a full bank account, that's a potential catastrophe. Cutting off their money, starving them of funds, that is one of the most powerful weapons we have.
And that leaves us with a really tough, lingering question. In a world that literally runs on generosity and global giving, how do we protect it? How do we make sure that our own kindness, our desire to help, is never, ever weaponized against us? That's the challenge, and it's one that's not going away anytime soon.